Okay, I'm going to read the first paragraph that we left off with. This is the introduction of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the biography, a condensed biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya. And this is, we're in the middle of Lord Chaitanya talking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya about the Vedanta Sutra. He sat and listened to Sarvabhauma for 7 days without saying anything. And then finally Sarvabhauma asked him, what are you thinking? And he said, well, I understand the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the Vedanta Sutra, very nicely, but your interpretation of it doesn't make any sense. So here's Lord Chaitanya talking. Srila Vyasadeva has very kindly compiled the Vedic knowledge in his Vedanta Sutra. But if one hears the commentation of the Mayavad school, as represented by the Shankara Sampradaya, certainly he will be misled on the path of spiritual realization. Yeah, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a part of that Mayavad school. Well, go ahead, Alan, you were the first on, so you can read the next paragraph.
The theory of emanations is the beginning of the subject of the Vedanta Sutra. All the cosmic manifestations are emanations from the absolute personality of Godhead by his inconceivable different energies. The example of the touchstone is applicable to the theory of emanation. The touchstone can convert an unlimited quantity of iron into gold, and still the touchstone remains as it is. Similarly, the Supreme Lord can produce all manifested worlds by his inconceivable energies, and yet he is full and unchanged. He is Purana, which is complete. And although an unlimited number of Puranas emanate from him, he is still a Purana.
Purna.
Purna.
P-U-R-N-A. Now, Purana is like a scripture.
Oh,
Purna.
okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Melissa. The theory of
illusion of the Mayavada school is advocated on the ground that the theory of emanation will cause a transformation of the absolute truth. If that is the case, Vyasadeva is wrong. To avoid this, they have skillfully brought in the theory of illusion. But the world or the cosmic creation is not false, as maintained by the Mayavada school. It simply has no permanent existence. A non-permanent thing cannot be called false altogether, but the conception that the material body is the self is certainly wrong. I'm not sure I understand what the difference is between the emanations and illusion.
See, the Mayavadis say that Jagan Mitya, Brahma, I'm not sure exactly what the thing that they quote is, but they say that the self or the spirit or Brahman is true, but the material world is false. We, the Vaishnavas, do not say the material world is false because it emanates from Krishna. Krishna is true. He is part of he is the supreme cause of all causes. So if it's coming from him, then it's true, even though it's temporary. It's created and destroyed again and again, but it's not false. They want to say that the cosmic manifestation is false, and that, or when Krishna creates the material manifestation, he himself is changed. Or if he takes a material body, that body is made of Maya. That body is made of. So that's why they call them Mayavads, because they think that the Supreme Lord is Maya, is illusion. And so that's what he's talking about when the theory of illusion. Okay, so anyway, I'm supposed to read the next paragraph, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I just actually said that. I've read this so many times, I'm just going off the top of my head here. The theory of illusion of the Mayavad school is advocated on the ground that the theory of emanation will cause a transformation of the absolute truth. In other words, if something is created, Brahman creates something, then and he manifests in the material world, then that entity who created it is somehow changed. If that's the case, Vyasadeva is wrong. To avoid this, they've skillfully brought the theory of illusion. But the world of the cosmic creation is not false, as maintained by the Mayavad school. It simply has no permanent existence. A non-permanent thing cannot be called false altogether, but the conception that the material body is the self is certainly wrong. I think I already read this. Did I read that, or did you read it, Melissa?
It was what I just read, but I did need
okay.
to hear it again because I was confused while I was reading it.
Oh yeah, okay. So is that cleared up a little bit, or do you have another?
Yeah, I needed that too. That did kind of clear it up.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to read the next paragraph then. Pranav, Om, or the Omkar in the Vedas, is the primeval hymn. This transcendental sound is identical with the form of the Lord. There is not a transcendental sound going in front of my house. The damn ice cream truck is coming. I want to let the air out of his tires because I read audiobooks and it always interrupts my audiobook reading. But it's hot today, so I guess it's ice cream season. Pranav, Om is the Omkar, or the Omkar in the Veda is the primeval hymn. The transcendental sound is identical with the form of the Lord. All the Vedic hymns are based on this Pranav Omkar. Tattvam Asi is but a side word in the Vedic literatures. Tattvam Asi means you are that. In other words, you are Brahman. Therefore, this word cannot be the primeval hymn of the Vedas. Sripad Shankaracharya has given more stress on the word Tattvam Asi than on the primeval principle Omkar. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita I am the syllable Om. That is non-different from Krishna. In fact, all the Vedas come from that word, all of them. Okay, go ahead, Al.
The Lord thus spoke on the Vedanta Sutra and defied all the propaganda of the Mayavada school. So I'm still trying to pronounce that better. How do you pronounce that word?
Bhattacharya.
Bhattacharya tried to defend himself and his Mayavada school by jugglery of logic and grammar, but the Lord defeated him by his forceful arguments. He affirmed that we are all related with this personality of Godhead eternally, and that devotional service is our eternal function in exchanging the deals of our relations. The results of such exchanges is to attain prema, or love for God. Yeah, prema, or love of Godhead. When love of Godhead is attained, love for all other beings automatically follow, because the Lord is in the sum total of all living beings.
Yeah, Krishna is the soul of our souls. So when we love Krishna, we're connected with Krishna. We feel connected in natural love and compassion for all other human and living entities, not only human beings, but animals and everything. Go ahead, Melissa.
The Lord said that but for these three items, namely eternal relation with God, exchange of dealings with Him, and the attainment of love for Him, all that is instructed in the Vedas is superfluous and concocted. The Lord further added.
That means there's three words in Sanskrit. You can read the next paragraph too. But the three words are Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Prayojana means love, attainment of love, and eternal relationship is Sambandha, and the exchange of dealings is Abhideya. No, Abhideya, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Yeah, that's right. In that order, respectively. Go ahead and read the second paragraph.
The Lord further added that the Mayavada philosophy taught by Śrīpada Sankaracharya is a imaginary explanation of the Vedas, but it had to be taught by him, Sankaracharya, because he was ordered to teach it by the personality of Godhead. In the Padma Purana, it is stated that the personality of Godhead ordered his lordship Shiva to deviate the human race from him, the personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead was to be so covered so that people would be encouraged to generate more and more population. His lordship Shiva said to Devi, "In the Kali Yuga, I shall preach the Mayavada philosophy, which is nothing but clouded Buddhism in the garb of Brahmana."
Yeah, I really don't even understand that. I mean, just to increase the population, in other words, for people to have more sex, they taught this horrible philosophy, and I don't get it, but that's above my pay grade. After hearing all these speeches of the Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhattacharya was struck with wonder and awe and regarded him in dead silence. The Lord then encouraged him with assurance that there was no cause to wonder. Quote, "I say that devotional service unto the personality of Godhead is the highest goal of human life," end quote. He then quoted a shloka from the Bhagavatam 110.7 and assured him that even the liberated souls who are absorbed in the spirit and spiritual realization can also take to the devotional service of the Lord, Hari, because the personality of Godhead has such transcendental qualities that he attracts the heart of the liberated souls too. Go ahead, Al.
Then the Bhattacharyas desired to listen to the explanation of the Atma Rama sloka from the Bhagavatam, chapter 1, verse 7.
Canto 1, chapter 7,
Yeah.
verse.
Oh, okay, I messed it up. My bad. The Lord first of all asked Bhattacharya to explain it, and after that he would explain it. Then the Bhattacharya then explained the sloka in a scholarly way with special references to logic. He explained the sloka in 9 different ways, chiefly based on the logic because he was the most renowned scholar of logic of the time.
The Lord, after hearing the Bhattacharya, thanked him for the scholarly presentation of the sloka, and then at the request of Bhattacharya, the Lord explained the sloka in 64 different ways without touching the 9 explanations given by Bhattacharya. I love that.
Yeah, I mean,
I would have loved to be a fly.
I was in the room where that happened in Jagannath Puri. There's a picture, you know, he was explaining the Vedanta Sutra, and there's an old book that's covered in cloth on a little book shelf or on the table there, like it's opened up, but it's covered in cloth. And that was the book, the original book that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had spoken the Vedanta Sutra to Lord Chaitanya for 7 days. And after this, it'll say later, but after this, you know, he was blown away by his explanation. You know, he didn't even touch any of the explanations that the Bhattacharya gave. And he explained it in 64 different ways. And then he showed him, you know, when he began to surrender, Lord Chaitanya showed him his 6-armed form, Sadbhuj, which means he has 2 arms as Lord Chaitanya. He has 2 arms as Krishna holding a bow and arrow, and he has 2 arms as Lord Ram with 2 arms with a bow and arrow, 2 arms with a sannyasi, you know, like with a Kamandalu and a danda, and then 2 arms with Krishna. Krishna is like holding a flute. And so he has a 6-armed form that's called Sadbhuj, and there's a painting in that room of Lord Chaitanya, a Lord Chaitanya Sadbhuj form. My spiritual master, when he's living across the valley there, across on the same side as on the other side of the hill from the palace, he had his house there. Anyway, he had a stained glass window of the Sadbhuj form. I was wondering where that was, because that was such a beautiful stained glass window. Anyway, After thus hearing the explanation of the Atmaram Shloka from the Lord, the Bhattacharya was convinced that such a scholarly presentation is impossible for any earthly creature. Before this, Sri Gopinathacharya had tried to convince him of the divinity of the Lord, but at that time he could not so accept him. But the Bhattacharya was astounded by the Lord's exposition of the Vedanta Sutra and explanations of the Atmaram Shloka, and thus he began to think that he had committed a great offense at the lotus feet of the Lord by not recognizing him to be Krishna himself. He then surrendered unto him, repenting for his past dealings with him, and the Lord was kind enough to accept the Bhattacharya. Out of his causeless mercy, the Lord manifested before him first as the four-handed Narayan, and then again as the two-handed Lord Krishna with a flute in his hand. Go ahead, Al.
The Bhattacharya at once fell down at the lotus feet of the Lord and composed many suitable slokas in the praise of the Lord by his grace. He composed 100 slokas in praise of the Lord. The Lord embraced him, and out of the transcendental ecstasy of the Bhattacharya, lost consciousness of the physical state of life. Tears, trembling, throbbing of the heart, perspiration, emotional waves, dancing, singing, crying, and all the 8 symptoms of trance were manifested in the body of the Bhattacharya. How do you pronounce that?
Sri Gopinathacharya.
Acharya became very glad and astonished by the marvelous conversation of his brother-in-law by the grace of the Lord.
Yeah, conversion. He was converted into a devotee at that point. Just by touching the body of the Lord, he started, exhibiting ecstatic symptoms.
Out of the 100 celebrated slokas composed by Bhattacharya in praise of the Lord, the following 2 are most important. And these 2 slokas explain the mission of the Lord in gist.
Go ahead and read both.
Let me surrender unto the personality of Godhead, who has appeared now as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is the ocean of all mercy and has now come down to teach us material detachment, learning, and devotional service to himself. 2, since pure devotional service of the Lord has been lost in the oblivion of time, the Lord has appeared to renovate the principles, and therefore I offer my obeisances unto his lotus feet.
Yeah, those 2 verses are really famous. It goes, here's the Sanskrit. Vairagya Vidinija Bhakti Yoga Śikṣāṣtaka Purushu Purana. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sarira Dari Kripambudiyastam Aham Prapade. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He is descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. And then the other one is really kind of awesome too, because it just shows how Lord Chaitanya appeared just to renovate the system of devotional service. He said, let my consciousness, which is like a honeybee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. This system had almost been lost due to the influence of time. That's pretty awesome. I mean, I don't understand how something can be lost, but I guess, when it's no longer in society, I guess it's just lost in the world, and Krishna can't explain it to anybody. That's why Krishna had to appear and speak the Bhagavad Gita again to Arjuna on the battlefield, because the succession, he said, had been lost. And Lord Chaitanya came to speak it again, and this time in the form of a devotee, to show people, Krishna said, surrender to me, but people couldn't understand it. So he taught them how to surrender by his own personal example. Let me read the next, I'll just read the first sentence here, and then Alan, you can read the next one.
Okay.
The Lord explained the word mukti to be equivalent to the word Vishnu, or the personality of Godhead. To attain mukti, or liberation from the bondage of material existence, is to attain to the service of the Lord.
The Lord then proceeded toward South India for some time and converted all he met on the way to become devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. Such devotees also converted many others to the cult of devotional service, or the Bhagavata Dharma of the Lord, and thus he reached the bank of the Godavari. Is that how you pronounce that? Godavari, where he met Srila Ramadana Raya.
Yep.
The governor of Madras, on behalf of
Maharaj Prataparudra,
the king of Orissa. His talks with Ramanda Raya are very important for the higher realization of transcendental knowledge, and the conversation itself forms a small booklet. We shall, however, give herewith a summary of the conversation.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Sri Ramadana Raya was a self-realized soul, although outwardly he belonged to a caste lower than the Brahmana in social status. He was not in the renounced order of life, and besides that, he was a high government servant in the state. Still, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him as a liberated soul on the strength of the high order of his realization of transcendental knowledge. Similarly, the Lord accepted Srila Haridasa Thakura, a veteran devotee of the Lord, coming from a Mohammedan family. And there are many other great devotees of the Lord who came from different communities, sects, and castes. The Lord's only criterion was the standard of devotional service of the particular person. He was not concerned with the outward dress of a man. He was concerned only with the inner soul of it and his activities. Therefore, all the missionary activities of the Lord are to be understood to be on the spiritual plane, and such the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or the cult of Bhagavata Dharma, has nothing to do with mundane affairs, sociology, politics, economic developments, or any other such sphere of life. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the purely transcendental urge of the soul.
See, that's what you were at your first, when I met you, Al, at the Bhagavad Dharma discourses on that hill there, the 50th anniversary of the first Pandal program in America.
Yeah.
You know, talking about Ramananda Roy, he was so advanced. He was he was in the inner circle of Lord Chaitanya, and he knew everything. I mean, he was not even a Brahmana, and he was a servant of the government. But the thing is, he was so advanced that he used to train the Devi Dasis to dance in front of Lord Jagannath. And he would personally bathe these young ladies with his own hands and, dress them and everything. But he was not at all agitated, and he didn't have any kind of, sexual attraction in his mind at all. And nobody else could do that, but he could. So that's the difference between Ramananda Roy and an ordinary person, because he was taking that as his devotional service to Lord Jagannath. When he met Ramananda Roy on the bank of the Godavari, and the Varnashram Dharma, followed by the Hindus, was mentioned by the Lord, Sri Ramananda Roy said that, he goes through a series of questions and answers. Lord Chaitanya asked him questions, and Ramananda Roy answered the questions of Lord Chaitanya. So you would think, like, why didn't he do it the other way around? Why wasn't Ramananda Roy asking questions and Lord Chaitanya, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead? But see, he can reveal himself in the heart of the devotee. So he was asking him, like, from the, the process of devotional service. And he started from the Varnashram Dharma, the system of the four castes and social orders of life, where everyone could realize the transcendence. That's the system of the four social orders and castes that Krishna created in order for the system of society to work properly for the service of Krishna. If everybody's working according to their quality, like the Brahmanas, the intellectual class, the Kshatriyas are the protecting class, the Vaishyas are the businessmen and the administrators and bankers, and the Shudras are the laborers. They're serving the other higher castes. And then the orders of life of the Brahmacharyas, Grahasas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis. Those are the other orders. But all these things are made by Krishna himself. And he was saying, okay, this is how people can become self-realized. And every time he would ask a question, he would answer the question. Lord Chaitanya said, okay, well, that's good, but I don't want that. That's not really what I was asking about. You go on from there and explain something more, something higher than that. And so step by step, he answered questions all the way up to the highest level. And when he finally answered a question about associating with devotees, then he accepted that. Otherwise, all the other ones he didn't accept as the perfection of life. So that was the exchange between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy. Let me read the rest of the paragraph here. The highest perfection of life is to get detached from the material attachment and proportionally realize the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The personality of Godhead recognizes a living being who is progressing in that line. Devotional service, therefore, is a culmination of the culture of all knowledge. When Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, appears for the deliverance of all fallen souls, he advises the deliverance of all living entities as follows. The Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, from whom all living entities have emanated, must be worshipped by all their respective engagements, because everything that we see is also an expansion of his energy. That is the way of real perfection, and it is approved by all bona fide acharyas, past and present. The system of Varnashram is more or less based on moral and ethical principles. There's very little realization of the transcendence, and as such, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected it as superficial and asked Ramananda Roy to go further into the matter. Go ahead, Al. We got 10 minutes left.
Sri Ramana Raya then suggested renunciation of fruitive actions unto the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita advises in this connection, whatever you do, whatever you eat, and whatever you give, as well as whatever you perform in penance, offer to me alone. This dedication on the part of the worker suggests that the personality of Godhead is a step higher than the impersonal conception of the
Varnashram
system. But still, the relation of the living being and the Lord is not distinct in that way. The Lord therefore rejected this proposition and asked Ramananda Raya to go further.
Okay, Melissa.
Raya then suggested renunciation of the Varnasumatra Dharma and the acceptance of devotional service. The Lord did not approve of this suggestion, also for the reason that all of a sudden one should not renounce his position, for that may not bring the desired result.
It was further suggested by Rai that attainment of spiritualization freed from the material conception of life is the topmost achievement for a living being. The Lord rejected this suggestion also because, on the plea of such spiritual realization, much havoc has been wrought by unscrupulous persons. Therefore, all of a sudden, this is not possible. The Roy then suggested the sincere association of self-realized souls and hearing submissively the transcendental message of the pastimes of the personality of Godhead. This suggestion was welcomed by the Lord. See, that's what we're doing. We're just talking about Krishna in between ourselves, and this is what Lord Chaitanya recommends. This suggestion was made following in the footsteps of Brahmaji, who said that the personality of Godhead is known as Ajit, or the one who cannot be conquered or approached by anyone. But such Ajita also becomes Jita, conquered by one method, which is very simple and easy. The simple method is that one has to give up the arrogant attitude of declaring oneself to be God himself. One must be very meek and submissive and try to live peacefully by lending the ear to the speeches of the transcendentally realized, self-realized souls who speak on the message of Bhagavad Dharma, or the religion of glorifying the Supreme Lord and his devotees. To glorify a great man is a natural instinct for living beings, but they have not learned to glorify the Lord. Perfection of life is attained simply by glorifying the Lord in association with the self-realized devotee of the Lord. The self-realized devotee is he who surrenders unto the Lord fully and who does not have attachment for material prosperity. Material prosperity and sense enjoyment and their advancement are all activities of ignorance in human society. Peace and friendship are impossible for society detached from the association of God and his devotees. It is imperative, therefore, that one sincerely seek the association of pure devotees and hear them patiently and submissively from any position of life. The position of a person in the higher or lower status of life does not hamper one in the path of self-realization. The only thing one has to do is to hear from a self-realized soul with a routine program. The teacher may also deliver lectures from the Vedic literatures following in the footsteps of the bygone acharyas who realized the absolute truth. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended this simple method of self-realization, generally known as Bhagavad Dharma. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the perfect guide for this purpose.
Above these topics discussed by the Lord in Sri Ramanda Raya, there were still more elevated spiritual talks between the two great personalities, and we purposely withhold those topics for the present because one has to come to the spiritual plane, because further talks with Ramanda Raya can be heard. We have presented further talks of Srila Ramanda Raya with the Lord in another book called The Teachings of Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah, he goes into the higher realms of spiritual realization between Krishna and the gopis. And
I bought that book.
Oh, you got that book? Yeah.
Yeah,
that was the first book that Prabhupada wrote before he wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is just the full, all of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya as delivered by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Teaching of Lord Chaitanya is just like a summary of all those teachings. At the conclusion of this meeting, Sri Ramananda Roy was advised. Oh, is this your turn, Melissa? It's your turn, right?
Oh, it is. Sorry.
Conclusion of this meeting. Right in the middle of the page there. At the conclusion.
I'm sorry, I don't see it.
At the conclusion of this meeting, Sri Ramananda Roy was advised by the Lord. It's the middle of the page.
Is it in the middle of the first paragraph?
No, it's here. I'll put it up at the top.
I think mine must have skipped because when you started reading, I didn't see the screen change.
Oh, okay. Well, now it's at the top. If you can see.
Of the 4 castes and 4 orders of human life. That's what I
No, this one, it's at the conclusion of this meeting.
Yeah, my screen has stopped.
It stopped?
Yeah, it didn't load.
I could take over.
Okay, why don't you read the next one? Maybe hers will refresh.
At the conclusion of the meeting of Sri Ramanda Raya, Ramanda Roy, I'm just going to pronounce that name a lot better, was advised by the Lord to retire from service and come to Puri so that they could live together and relish a transcendental relationship. Sometimes later, Sri Ramanda Raya retired from the government service, and took a pension from the king. He returned to his residence in Puri, where he was one of the most confidential devotees of the Lord. There was another gentleman at Puri of the name Śikṣāṣtaka, who was also a confidant like Ramanda Raya. The Lord used to hold confidential talks on spiritual values with 3 or 4 companions at Puri, and he passed 18 years in that way in spiritual trance. His talks were recorded by his private secretary, Sri Damodar. Is that how you pronounce Damodar?
Damodar. Sri Damodar.
Damodar. Okay, Sri Damodar Goswami, one of the 4 most intimate devotees.
Can you see the screen now, Melissa?
It's black now. My screen is black. It's
It hit at the last moment.
frozen.
That's weird. Okay, well, we got 1 minute left. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you still worship Krishna and Lord Chaitanya at the same time, or is it the same, or are they the same thing?
Lord Chaitanya, it says, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahayanya. Lord Chaitanya is none other than Radha and Krishna combined. He came in the mood of Radharani to understand how Radharani loved him, because he couldn't even understand it himself. So he had to take that role as Srimati Radharani in order to understand Radharani's love. That was the internal reason why Lord Chaitanya appeared as he did. The external reason was to propagate the Sankirtan movement, the congregational chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, and which will go on for the next 10,000 years in this country, in this world. But the internal reason was because he appeared with the complexion and mood of Radharani, just so that he could taste why she loved him so much. And so he was Krishna. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself and Radharani. And in the temple, in the preaching